Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show.
And then we come to that passage over in the 8th chapter of 1 Kings, which reads, "And it was in the heart of David, my father, to build an house for the name of the Lord God of Israel. And the Lord said unto David, my father, whereas it was in thine heart to build an house unto my name, thou didst well that it was within thine heart." And that's really what I want to talk about this morning. It is well that it was within thine heart. As if to say, David, you will not be able to finish the temple. You will not be able to build it. But I just want to bless you because it was within thine heart. Your dream will not be fulfilled. The majestic hopes that guided your days will not be carried out in terms of an actual temple coming into being that you were able to build. But I bless you, David, because it was within thine heart. You had the desire to do it. You had the intention to do it. You tried to do it. You started to do it. And I bless you for having the desire and the intention in your heart. It is well that it was within thine heart. So many of us in life start out building temples, temples of character, temples of justice, temples of peace. So often we don't finish them. Because life is like a Schubert's unfinished symphony. At so many points we start, we try, we set out to build our various temples. And I guess one of the great agonies of life is that we are constantly trying to finish that which is unfinishable. We are commanded to do that. And so we, like David, find ourselves in so many instances having to face the fact that our dreams are not fulfilled.
Welcome back to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nora Muhammad. I'm glad to be back with you for this episode, and this is a special episode dedicated to our good brother, Dr. Martin Luther King. And each January, I want to make sure that as the nation recognizes this great man and this great leader, that Nora Speaks is recognizing him as well. And often what I try to do is I share excerpts of sermons or speeches that Dr. King gave that are not part of the mainstream conversation about Dr. King. I think to some extent, Dr. King has unfortunately went the way of so many other great people and they sort of depict Dr. King as a symbol, disparagingly, almost like a mascot, almost representing something or an idea that we are persuaded to have about him and about ourselves and the current climate, or the climate and tone that those who are in certain aspects of leadership want us to have. Although Dr. King and what he taught and what he believed and his labor, his sacrifice, and his legacy might be one thing, but so many of our leaders have been packaged and repackaged and given back to us as something that they're not. And we may find those leaders on stamps now, and after they've been watered down and made to be more palatable. If you recall, you may not know this, and maybe this is an education to you for the first time, but Dr. King was not someone who was favored by modern media or current leaders at the time of his untimely demise. Dr. King was advocating against the war in Vietnam, and that was not something that was favored by those leaders at the time. When the U.S. was prosecuting that war, Dr. King became an enemy as he preached nonviolence here within the confines of the United States of America. That wasn't something that was just for the U.S., that nonviolent approach, but it was worldwide. Dr. King was a nonviolent man. He led nonviolent protests, boycotts, sit-ins, things such as that. And so he questioned the wisdom and the right that the U.S. had to be in Vietnam, and the sending our young men, the poor of the United States, not just black, but white as well, and using them to prosecute a war when these same young men, black and white, would not be in the same schools in the U.S., would not be riding next to each other on the bus in the U.S., but they can go and die somewhere for the U.S. So, Dr. King became someone that wasn't just controversial to the leaders of this nation, but he even became controversial to those leaders within the civil rights movement who thought that Dr. King was going off tangentially and weakening the efforts for desegregation, the efforts for voting rights, the efforts for civil rights, because he's talking about what was happening in Vietnam. And there were churches that did not welcome Dr. King that once did. There were black leaders that were friendly to Dr. King that became unfriendly to Dr. King. So, the legacy and the history of Dr. King is something that I think should be studied, should be examined. And I try my best to provide a unfamiliar context of Dr. King that which we get in the mainstream. And he has meant so much to this nation. He means a lot to me when I think about someone who sacrificed, who allowed himself to be vulnerable. And now I will say that I am not in agreement with turning the other cheek. If you hit me on one cheek, nature demands that I defend myself. So, I don't agree with allowing yourself to be abused. I think that's just not in alignment with nature, right? If dust falls in front of our eyes instinctively, without even, having a moment of consideration, our eyelids blink, right? It's just so natural that we defend ourselves. So I don't necessarily agree with a turning of the cheek sort of idea when those who are your enemies are trying to abuse you. That's not something I agree with. But the seriousness and the commitment and the dedication that our brother employed, the discipline that he employed, I think speaks volumes. And I think we can learn a lot from our good brother, Dr. King. So in that opening excerpt that you heard, it was from a sermon that Dr. King gave titled Unfulfilled Dreams. And, yes, Dr. King was a civil rights leader, and he spoke out against the war in Vietnam. Dr. King was also a pastor. Dr. King was a reverend. He's someone who was concerned about the moral fiber and the character of his people. And so in that excerpt there that you heard, he's talking about specifically David wanting to build the temple to honor God. And, although the temple might have been unfinished, the sheer fact that this one had it in his heart to serve, had it in his heart to give, speaks volumes about who he was, his intentions and his character. And so Dr. King talks a lot about that throughout this recording. And at the conclusion of this episode, or at the conclusion of my remarks, I should say, we're going to listen to probably the last maybe 5 minutes or so of that sermon, because I think what he says in it is something really good for us to digest and to study and to think about. Being good and wanting to be good and wanting to have good character in spite of, our personal faults, flaws, and defects, wanting to accomplish something great because it's good, in spite of the failing on our part to complete that task, to complete that project. But it can show and provide a measurement of the goodness of our hearts. And even in that lecture, which I will include a link in the show notes for you so that you can go back and listen to the entire delivery, he talks about, sometimes people are criticized and those individuals who are trying to make change and produce improved outcomes, they'll be criticized. And Dr. King talks about us not being so judgmental, not and I think that's important because I've seen it personally. We want to cast judgment and we want to issue condemnation to each other. And frankly, we're not the judge of one another. We can certainly provide our own assessments of who and what we think one another is in terms of our character, in terms of our morality. But that's really something that someone has to wrestle with themselves and that in their deity. And the idea of, wanting to assert or condemn someone when that one is striving to do great for people, striving to make change for people. I think, an examination of Dr. King, let's remember the time. Let's remember George Wallace and others who, were in total opposition of Dr. King, who thought Dr. King was evil, who thought Dr. King was the devil. And Dr. King is saying to these same people, I want to be your brother. And so these individuals are casting their own blanket ideas about this one. And so, sometimes we have to question those who are casting aspersions about an individual. We have to question their motives and question their own values. And then also perhaps take a look and see what they're producing. Is it better for us? Is it good for us? And in fact, perhaps we should just reserve our judgment and study the totality of what this individual is trying to do. And yes, someone may have a misstep. Someone may make a mistake. I mean, I would like to think that mistakes would happen if you're trying to do something. Now, those fans in the stands or who are on the sidelines who have never attempted to do anything, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. It's easy to be a critic from the stands. But when you are engaged and involved in trying and sacrificing and laboring and putting your foot forward and rolling up your sleeves and really being about the work of creating change in our communities, in our states, in our families, in our schools, then any activity is going to reveal some imperfection. But what's good is that there's activity, and what's better is that you're doing it with a good heart. So it is important that we give ourselves the same grace that we would give to others, and that we also allow others to have grace. So I say in this time, 2026 is underway, and there's so much that we have to do in this season. And I hope that you find companions in the field laboring for the good of people. Like I have companions, wonderful people who are laboring to do good for our people. This podcast is a product of that. It's one piece of that. There's so much more that I do besides this, and I get to work with wonderful people in the community, and whether or not their defects are revealed to me, I understand that my defects may be revealed to them, but we find ourselves in partnership doing good, and that, I can improve upon those areas of my activity that, might not be best or that deserve improvement, as I may see the same in my sister and my brother next to me. But one thing that I'm glad about is that we're in the field of endeavor, striving to make change. And I think that shows what's in a person's heart and what's in their capacity to do. So there's a lot that we can do. And I know every year there's an MLK Day of Service. And so folks will be out and about in some way, doing good, giving back to their community, being the leaders that they are. And I say, I salute you. Keep going, keep doing the work. And if you, don't find the pleasure of people when you're doing good, well, maybe they're not the people we should be striving to seek the pleasure of. But even still, we always should seek the pleasure of that whom we serve and who we worship, because pleasure may not always be in people, especially, when we're dealing with the diseases of envy and jealousy in our hearts. So understand, as Dr. King says in this wonderful sermon, that life is a continual story of shattered dreams. But he says, when you're striving to do something worthwhile, understand that there will be the tension between good and evil. That's been demonstrated in his life and his legacy and his work. And it's something that we should have an awareness of, the tension between good and evil, but we should endure regardless. So I'm going to close by thanking you for joining me for this episode. I do encourage you to follow Noor Speaks on social media, X, Instagram, and Facebook, and subscribe to the Noor Speaks the Noor Speaks YouTube channel. And we're going to close out this episode by listening to the rest of the delivery by our good brother, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Stay in peace.
In the final analysis, God does not judge us by the separate incidents or the separate mistakes that we make, but by the total bent of our lives. In the final analysis, God knows that his children are weak and they're frail. In the final analysis, what God requires is that your heart is right. Salvation isn't reaching the destination of absolute morality, but it's being in the process and on the right road. There's a highway called Highway 80. I've marched on that highway from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery. But I never will forget my first experience with Highway 80 was driving with Coretta and Ralph and Juanita Abernathy to California. We drove from Montgomery all the way to Los Angeles on Highway 80. It drove all the way out to Los Angeles. And you know, being a good man, being a good woman, does not mean that you've arrived in Los Angeles. It simply means that you're on Highway 80. Maybe you haven't gotten as far as Selma, or maybe you haven't gotten as far as Meridian, Mississippi, or Monroe, Louisiana. That isn't the question. The question is whether you're on the right road. Salvation is being on the right road, not having reached the destination. Oh, we have to finally face the point that there is none good but the Father. But if you're on the right road, God has the power, and He has something called grace. And He puts you where you ought to be. Now, the terrible thing in life is to be trying to get to Los Angeles on Highway 78. That's when you're lost. That sheep was lost not merely because he was doing something wrong in that parable, but he was on the wrong road. And he didn't even know where he was going. He became so involved in what he was doing, nibbling sweet grass, that he got on the wrong road. Salvation is being sure that you're on the right road. It is well. That's what I like about it. That it was within thine heart. Some weeks ago, somebody was saying something to me about a person that I have great, magnificent respect for. They were trying to say something that didn't sound too good about his character, something he was doing. And I said, number one, I don't believe it. But number two, even if he is, he's a good man because his heart is right. And in the final analysis, God isn't going to judge him by that little separate mistake that he's making, because the bent of his life is right. The question I want to raise this morning with you, is your heart right? If your heart isn't right, fix it up today. Get God to fix it up. Get somebody to be able to say about you, you may not have reached the highest height. He may not have realized all of his dreams, but he tried. Isn't that a wonderful thing for somebody to say about you? He tried to be a good man. He tried to be a just man. He tried to be an honest man. His heart was in the right place. And I can hear the voice saying, crying out through the eternities, I accept you. You are the recipient of my grace because it was in your heart. And it is so well that it was within thine heart. I don't know this morning about you, but I can make a testimony. You don't need to go out this morning saying that Martin Luther King is a saint. Oh, no. I want you to know this morning that I'm a sinner like all of God's children, but I want to be a good man. And I want to hear a voice saying to me one day, I take you in and I bless you because you tried. It is well that it was within thy heart. What's in your heart this morning? You get your heart right.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Nora Speaks. Look out for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, you can visit my website, noraspeaks.com. Or if you have a listener question, you can email me at nora@noraspeaks.com. You can also follow Nora Speaks on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Nora Speaks. I will be sure to include links in the show notes. If Nora Speaks has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.